Professor Biswas, let's talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. It's coming up, and specifically some of the advertisements. Why do you think people think it's such a big deal with the ads?
Well, Super Bowl advertising has always been the biggest deal, but I think there are specifically about 5 or 6 really good reasons why they trump everything else, and I'll go through them very briefly and quickly. First of all, 115 million pairs of eyeballs, more than any other single event anywhere in the world. So right there, the biggest reach by far, therefore the greatest advertising stage or platform of all. That's one big reason. The second is what we call, in my opinion, what we're seeing now is choice overload and fragmentation in TV viewing and watching. So, we all have so many different choices and hundreds and sometimes even thousands of options. This is the one event that goes beyond that, and everyone is willing to watch this one program where you get ratings of close to 50 instead of Nielsen ratings of 4, 5, 6, 8 for even top-rated TV shows. So choice overload and segment fragmentation is kind of put to the side when it comes to Super Bowl viewing. Thirdly, it's the only event only TV event where consumers are actually watching for the commercials and not pushing back against the commercials. Nowadays with viewer empowering technology like TiVo, DVRs, the remotes with skip buttons for commercials, etc., it's really hard for advertisers to grab consumers' attention. Super Bowl is quite the opposite. It's the advertiser's dream because people are actually using their TiVos to, ironically, rewind and see the commercials over and over again. So that's really quite the coup for advertisers. And then the other big reason, which people seem to overlook or underestimate, a little-known fact, that the Super Bowl is the one event that grabs the highest, by far, the highest percentage of and the highest number of millennials. These are 18 to 34-year-olds, as we know, but they're very hard to reach through advertising. And last Super Bowl, Super Bowl 49, we actually had 36 million millennials who watched it, and that's 31% of all the viewers who watched the Super Bowl. So if you look at this, and there are other reasons as well, but these 5 or 6 reasons gives compelling reason for the advertisers to really come to this party more than any other that they can think of anywhere on the planet.
So I would imagine that they're going to be paying a pretty penny. Have you heard, what the top ad is going to cost someone this year and what you could get in at the lowest level?
Absolutely. A pretty penny is putting it mildly. I mean, it is quite something. It's I want to say it's the lowest are about spots are about 4 million for 30-second spots, and it can go up to as high as 5.5 million, pushing the 6 million mark for a 30-second spot. So on an average, it averages out to about $5 million for a 30-second spot, and that does not even take into account potentially another million or $500,000 to produce some of these high-quality glitz and glamour Madison Avenue type ads. So just the media spot cost them 30 seconds, $5 million.
Now, are any of them going to try to do something unique? Like, I think one year there was that 1 second ad, or there was something crazy like that, or any of the advertisers, you're hearing whispers about them doing something different?
Well, you're right. The 1 second ad I think you're referring to was about 5 or 6 years ago when Miller tried to combat Budweiser's massive ad spend by mocking them with the so-called 1 minute ad or a 1 second ad and so on and so forth. There are some gimmicks like that. The one this time, I guess there's a couple that one could talk about. Taco Bell has created this huge pre-game mystique or buzz about some super secret product that they're going to launch that no one knows about, and even James Harden and Other celebrities are mystified and wondering what it is, so everyone's looking for that. That's buzzworthy. Then the other thing is T.J. Miller, the kind of edgy comedian from, I think you might recognize him from Silicon Valley. He's going to be shilling Shock Top, and they're calling it the greatest. They themselves, of course, are calling it the greatest commercial ever seen on Super Bowl. So creating buzz with that. Then there are, of course, a couple of other companies that are asking consumers to leverage their second and third screen, using even Google Cardboard and Instagram and Snapchat. So these are the things that some of the companies are trying this year that might be a little different from the previous years.
Yeah, I did want to talk a little bit about how they might be utilizing social media this year. Are they going to, come out with any big campaigns ahead of their big commercials, or will they be doing it during the Super Bowl? What do you expect to see on social media?
Well, a lot of the companies, in fact, most of the companies nowadays who are spending $5 million in advertising for one 30-second spot in the Super Bowl realize that that's a pretty high price to pay to come to this party. So what they do is leverage, as you pointed out, the pregame buzz, the in-game conversation, as well as the post-game Monday morning water cooler and the talking heads buzzing about the ads. So that's why these companies, whether it's Doritos with their Crash the Super Bowl campaign, or whether it's, the LG with their Liam Neeson ad, where they're leveraging a lot of the celebrities, what they're trying to do is get people to go to their second and third screens, their phones and their, whether it's their iPads or laptops. By the way, I should add that nowadays it's become such that they're calling the TV screen the second screen. The first screen has really become their laptops and their computers. So, but what they're trying to do is these companies are trying to, in fact, a lot of these companies are doing that. Ford is doing that. Kia is doing that. Doritos, of course, I mentioned, is doing that. Squarespace, who are using Key and Peele. The comedians, they're doing that. They're all basically leveraging social media and getting you to go to their site or through through Facebook or Instagram, create a conversation with the company before the game and during the game. So this is going to be interesting to see, because for the first time, social media is almost beginning to dominate. Social, as we say, is beginning to dominate the Super Bowl conversation on commercials.
And in your opinion, where is the most prime time spot for a commercial? Right before halftime?
That is actually a multi-million-dollar, I guess a $5 million question, Chelsea. So usually the spots that are the most expensive are just leading into the halftime, obviously, because of this year's, it's always a big event, but this year's with Pepsi's halftime show. That tends to be the big money slot. The other one can be the fourth quarter slot, so right before the 2-minute warning or just before the end of the game. But they're gambling that the game would be a close one, which unfortunately for sports fans hasn't been the case in most of the Super Bowls. Most of them don't go down to the wire, but those could be the high ticket spots, basically.
And I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your favorite commercial of all time?
Of all time, or?
Yeah, of all time, the best one that you've ever seen in a Super Bowl.
Oh wow, that's like asking someone to pick their favorite song or the best movie ever, right? So
yeah,
and it actually was, because there's millions of commercials. But let's see, I guess mine would have to be a tie between the 1984 commercial, which was by Apple when they launched the Macintosh for the very first time. And it's actually known as the greatest commercial the world almost never saw, because it received the most number of awards. It created the greatest buzz, and it also launched a little-known company at that time, Apple, into the limelight. And the irony is, or the interesting twist to it is that it actually wasn't even supposed to be shown. But that's a long story. But that, they say, is the commercial that, and by the way, it was directed by Ridley Scott, and it was a multi-million-dollar extravaganza. It ran only once during the Super Bowl, was never shown ever again, and it had the greatest impact on not only advertising, not only Apple, but here's why I think it is definitely one of my two favorites is it changed advertising in the Super Bowl forever. It's because of that 1984 spot that Super Bowl advertising is what it is today. And the second one, very quickly, my favorite, that kind of comes close to that or almost ties, is the one from just 3 years ago, Puppy Love, Budweiser. I think that one people of this generation will remember. The little lost dog that the Clydesdales bring back home. Again, a classic by Budweiser. Heartrending, but a classic. So I think those two, pretty close.
Ridley Scott's one of my favorites. I think he produces The Good Wife, so it's he's a fantastic filmmaker and television maker. So I can imagine, I didn't see that commercial, but I can imagine it was really well produced.
It absolutely was. Check it out. It is a classic. It's got the typical Blade Runner type of somber, grave, the Ridley Scott signature gravitas to the production. And by the way, just since you said that he is one of your favorites, here's a teaser for you. Ridley Scott actually, I believe, has produced one of the commercials you're going to see on February 7th. So I'll let you look for that.
Yeah, that'll be a fun little treasure hunt.
Yes,
what do you think we're going to see more of this year? Is it going to be more comedy, more dark, more? I don't know. What do you think we're going to see more of?
Excellent question. Actually, that is a great question because people don't often ask what type of commercials. They usually ask what will be the companies or the brands or what will be the actual commercials. Well, the tone is very important, and this year, I believe, is going to be very different from the past 3 or 4 years, and here's why. The last few years, we've seen a preponderance of, or at least a greater share than usual, of serious, somber, preachy type of commercials. You know what I'm talking about with the NFL domestic violence ads last year. There have been Clint Eastwood's halftime show to the nation in times of falling economy. There's been the Chrysler ads about the farmer and veterans, and there have been a lot of serious types of ads, and there will be those this year as well. But in my opinion, this year, at least from what I'm seeing already of the pre-releases, we're going to see a more upbeat Super Bowl. The tempo is going to be more lively because, and here's why, I think we've seen enough. We're going through everything from fear of terrorism, national insecurity, depressed economy potentially, and now these political campaigns aren't cheerful, to say the least. So in the wake of all this, I believe this year the advertisers are making an effort to get the mood and the spirits of people up. So we're going to see more humor, more lighthearted commercials. There might be heart-tugging commercials and themes as well, but I think there'll be fewer of the sad, depressing, or, the preachy type of commercials. There will be a few. Certainly, I don't think there'll be one like the Nationwide commercial last year where the 10-year-old boy dies. I think companies have learned their lesson from that experiment last year. So I think we're looking for a more upbeat, buoyant type of Super Bowl as far as the overall tenor or tone of the commercials are concerned.
All right. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I guess, as I always tell my students in class, watch the game. Should be a good one. But if you have to miss the game, make sure you don't miss the commercials.